This is Jake Seeley, and I'm the blown ACL that ruins your football season.
Good news, everyone! Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool!
I know!
It feels so right! It's Jake Seeley.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Nice try, Moonman. Pretending not to know. Earth's greatest mastermind! You just made the list!
I thought you said that was a myth.
Just because it's a myth doesn't mean it's not true.
If you all blindly follow my plan, we may have a chance.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, Bourne.
Game on, you ducks. It is week 7 for the Ranks-ish kind of podcast, a long-form podcast I do with a guest. And before we get to this terrific guest, I was on his show earlier this season, and hopefully you are following this person already. And hopefully you are listening to this podcast regularly as you do mine. And if not, I'm going to say quite a few times for you to rectify that. It's probably the first of about 5 or 6, I'll probably say it. But let's get to some of the topics I see you guys asking about in the comments over The Athletic. A reminder, if you want to jump into the Discord, 10 a.m. on Thursdays, and again, normally 11 a.m. on Sundays, but right about halftime of the London games. This is the last week for a while, at least until November, as a reminder. And we also reminder, doubleheader on Monday Night Football again, last time for a while. But some of the things I've been seeing in waivers and the rankings for Kayshon Boutte is one of the bigger names people are asking about. And yeah, like I get it. But the comparison that I made for Drake May is along the lines of like a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, is he doesn't need to focus on somebody. He won't focus on somebody. He's going to take what's given. Matchups will determine a lot. We can try to predict the matchups, but it's a little tough with Boutte. The one thing that we did see in this game and something to look for going forward, when not under pressure and has time to throw, Drake May does target Boutte, but basically never outside of that. And we are going to talk buys and lows, so stick around for that. It's actually going to be after our guest. And there's a buy low with this team that I'll be mentioning. But the big thing here is with Boutte is the first huge game since week 1. He had the one catch for a touchdown in the other week. And he was mentioned in waivers for weeks on end, and nobody wanted him. So I thought it was kind of interesting that everybody's like, well, then why don't you want him this week? Because of this, because it's similar to the Bills. You're never going to be able to predict a good game. If he's your wide receiver 4, fine, but I'd rather have a wide receiver 4 that pops off every other game, or at least every third game, which I guess technically if one in week 1 and one in week 6 is every third, if you did the first third and the second third. But you get my point. That was a long layoff in between. Boutte's fine. If an injury happens, maybe you'll see some more of a concentrated target share, but this has also come down with Hunter Henry on a down tick, and he's a tight end. And I see some people asking about Hunter Henry, and this is just what happens with 1 being a tight end and 2, a team like the Patriots with Drake May that will throw it around. Another name that I see a lot of people, or another question I see a lot of people asking about is the Buccaneers situation. This is, you need a flow chart, everybody. So yes, Mike Evans, if he's back, will be inside the top 20. I wouldn't have him as a wide receiver 1 because this isn't one of those situations I bring up a lot where the returning player is coming back to a team that's performing well without him, or the player replacing him is performing well in his stead. That would be like in his stead? Whatever. This would be like an example would be Rico Dowdle going off and they bring back Chuba Hubbard. And so they bring back Chuba Hubbard. We know he's 100% healthy because Rico Dowdle's doing fine. They don't need to rush back Chuba Hubbard. With this one, because Ibuka got hurt, we don't know if Mike Evans might be rushed back. If he plays this week. Now, again, he'll be a wide receiver 2, but I think there's some risk there. If he's out, then I see people asking about Sterling Shepard because I didn't mention him alongside Tez Johnson and Cameron Johnson, basically because the assumption was that everybody knows who Sterling Shepard is, and it really comes down to Shepard and the Johnsons would be a mix. It's basically the Bills. It could be any one of the 3. The most likely beneficiary is K-Dot, and once again, even if Mike Evans is back, because there is no Ibuka, but Tez Johnson has the upside, smaller Kadarius Toney type, somewhat like Tank Dell, maybe a mix of Tank Dell and Kadarius Toney, but gives you the idea of it could be a nice high ceiling, a very low floor. Sterling Shepard and Cameron Johnson will be more reliable. But the interesting thing was that after the Ibuka injury, and this could have just been in-game adjustments, but Shepard was the last one on the list. It was actually both the Johnsons in front of him. And
hey, phrasing!
That's why, again, I would avoid, I know everybody can't have that luxury, but I would avoid if you can. The 49ers situation is another flowchart one where if it's Mac Jones, then no George Kittle and no Ricky Pearsall, then Kendrick Bourne's top 20, top 25 at minimum. If it's Brock Purdy with Kendrick Bourne and still no Pearsall and George Kittle, Still top 25-ish, a little bit more risk there in case actually going to talk to JJ about the situation. So he'll probably shed a little bit more light as well on his opinion. But one of those situations where it could just be a connection between the quarterback that doesn't replicate with Purdy. So now we go to Mac Jones with George Kittle and Ricky Pearsall and Kendrick Bourne. And Bourne would be more of a wide receiver 3. We'll also have to see how much Pearsall and Kittle are practicing. It sounds like Kittle's more likely than Pearsall. But if there's one or the other, Bourne is still a solid top 30. And then, of course, the Purdy overlay on top of those. And that you get, like I said, it's a giant flow chart. I need, what's his face? Charlie Day to help me do this and scramble over here. Trade rumors I see floating around. And I know people like to ask about trade rumors. Should I stash this person? What about this? Let's also remember, it's about a 1 in 20, 1 in 25 chance of these rumors actually coming to fruition. And if you look back just this last year, a lot of it ends up being wide receivers, not so much running back. Sounds like the only one that really is having a chance of a running back trade is Breece Hall, mostly because the Jets still don't have a win. And Breece Hall in the last year of his contract. A little bit more cloudy now that Braylon Allen was hurt weeks ago, but still a chance that Breece Hall gets traded. I think the only 2 teams that are in conversation, it sounds like, are the Chiefs. I know some people floated out the Texans, but I don't know about the Bears with the fact that Ben Johnson just keeps going to Swift. And it was a good game, and still DeAndre Swift being DeAndre Swift, but Breece Hall's value wouldn't change too much up or down, no matter the team he's on. Maybe a little stock up on the Chiefs, but I don't think he would necessarily get the same workload with the Chiefs. The touchdown equity would be up, but kind of offset. He would still be a top 10 running back. The Jacoby Myers one is interesting. Maybe he gets in a better landing spot that uses him more consistently, but more so if you want to stash somebody like this one, speculatory, is Jacoby Myers being gone would open the door for Jack Besh to step into that role, who had already kind of stepped in, taking snaps from Dante Thornton. So that would be interesting. And of course, the David Njoku one. David Njoku out or traded makes Harold Fannin a top 10 tight end. So, as I said, let's get to this guest because that's probably what you came for, honestly. All right, and surprising to him, actually to me as well, when I was on his podcast, we've known each other for quite a while. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe pushing 10, 15 years at this point. In the original video game draft, I had to remind him of JJ Zachariason. If you're not following, like, I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you know him, but if not, rectify that, lateround.com, your podcast, your guides, award-winning podcasting guide. You know what? You tell everybody everything you got going on because, like I said, they need to rectify this if they don't know about you because one of the best in the business. So tell everybody all your good stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Everything can be found on lateround.com. I've got a podcast, the Late Round Podcast. And then, like you said, have like rookie guides. And I mean, we're past that point at this point in time. You know, we're past the draft times and, with prospects and with your season long drafts, those are done too. But if you want to go back and look at how wrong I was on things, you can go back and buy those guides from this past year because I will be wrong, and I will be wrong about the things that I say today as well.
No, you don't want to be part of the Twitter of like, remember when I told you?
Yeah. I mean, like people are like, why am I getting trolled right now? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe because last week you were victory lapping the dumbest thing on earth. You know, like when you're out there being obnoxious, expect people to be obnoxious back to you. Thank you.
Yeah. And yet when we do it back to them, we're the jerks, but definitely not a jerk. Like I said, one of the best, like known him for a long time. And we actually have somewhat of a video game theme kind of going on here today, as I've done the 5 topics I kind of pick out for our guest. And the first one is not, but it is a big topic to talk about. So Bill Jacory Croskey-Merritt, poor showing. Like, listen, admittedly, his first poor showing. The crazy part about it is because he started off so hot in limited fashion that he is still the league leader in yards per touch for running backs, and he's still second in yards per carry, which is just ridiculous to think about. And obviously, that's not sustainable. He's not going to stay up there at 6.6 yards per carry. But now he gets Dallas, which everybody's like, yes, Dallas. Like can I think I could average like a half yard per carry against Dallas. Maybe. Yeah. Before I got killed, like 3 touches in, I'd die, but I think I could do it. What's your rest of the season outlook for Croskey-Merritt? Because I know some people are scared that Chris Rodriguez is going to come back and mess things up, even though he got the start, that being Croskey-Merritt. But how do you feel about him? Solid RB2, or what? Like I said, what's your outlook the rest of the season for Croskey-Merritt?
I think we could see him, generally like when we're mid-season like this, or even early season, when it comes to rookies, I'm going to give them a natural projection bump for what they can do rest of season, because we typically do see, like, if you just look at first half and second half of the season, historically, rookies do see a bump. I mean, like a player like Croskey-Merritt should see more and more work as the season goes on. Now, when I say more and more work, I mean, this past week, he had a 90% running back rush share. Like he saw the majority of their backfield touches. And that was with Chris Rodriguez with that calf issue. I think it was calf problem. Yeah. And so obviously, when Rodriguez is healthy, I think we're back in that like 70-75% range for Croskey-Merritt more than likely, which is still really, really strong. The biggest question mark is the pass catching stuff. He still hasn't hit a 10% target share in a single game this year. And that was sort of a problem. Like he didn't really have a robust receiving profile as a prospect either. And so I have no problem / questions about what he can do really on the ground. And I think that we'll see him see double-digit touches on the ground pretty consistently week in and week out. The bigger question for me is just what is he going to do through the air? I think that probably during his rookie season is going to limit him and not allow him to like become a full-blown fantasy football stud unless he's in these kind of matchups like Dallas where, if you are, even like Quinshon Judkins against Miami this week, it's like, okay, we have question marks about Judkins and how much receiving work he's going to see. But when you're in these plus matchups where you can get 15, 16, 17 carries against these like just completely atrocious defenses, then they have opportunity to be RB1s, obviously, in that given week. So I think Croskey-Merritt can be like a solid RB2 as the season progresses. But I doubt that we see him become like a full-blown superstar because the receiving numbers just aren't there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to reference the Judkins thing, if they don't give him 25 carries in this, that's a travesty for the Browns. Yeah. Just hand it off, and maybe force Dylan Gabriel to throw the ball 5 times. Another running back, actually speaking of the Browns division. So here is the video game fashion. Let's see if I can pull this off. Well, I got to get my voice ready for this. Chase Brown. Is it time or finish him? Or is that where we're done? Is this a like fatality? Like there's zero hope left for Chase Brown now to the fact he lost touches in a decent volume fashion to Samaje Perine, and now we've got the little floating rumors of Taj Brooks potentially getting into the mix. Are we done? Fatality? It's over. All our hopes are done.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously the Chase Brown thesis this season was Joe Burrow's quarterback. They're going to have a lot of scoring opportunities, and Chase Brown will more than likely see a lot of looks both on the ground and through the air. And that was the case to start the season. He had a 100% running back rush share during the first 2 weeks of the season. He saw every single running back rush. And it wasn't until really like last week when Joe Flacco took over that he didn't see a great target share. He had a 5% target share last week when previously it was like up in the 16% range. And like he was seeing enough work. Now, I still think that Chase Brown is the best running back that they have on that team. But obviously, like this is a player who is going to be more volume dependent than other running backs at this point because there's not a great offensive line in front of him. And the situation isn't fantastic. And I think he's one of those players that probably needs the circumstance and the situation and environment around him to be strong for him to be a really, really good fantasy asset. I still look at him and this Bengals situation and I'm like, nothing's been normal this season. Like I just want something to just be normal. Like I just want one game to be normal. Like even last week, if you want to call that normal, they get the Packers and at Lambeau, like it hasn't been a normal season whatsoever for this Bengals offense and specifically for Chase Brown. So I want to see what they do this weekend in Pittsburgh, against Pittsburgh. Flacco, he didn't dump the ball off as much this past week, but Chase Brown had a very similar route participation rate. So that kind of thing fluctuates and usually will regress to some mean eventually. I still think Chase Brown can be a 10 to 12% target share player. And if he sees even like 2/3 of the team's running back rushes, like he's been seeing the last couple of weeks, or at least he saw last week, I think he has a chance to at least be more usable than what perception is saying. But if you were to say, is he going to even come close to where we were drafting him? No, I mean, I think we're past that point. So I'm not ready to just like Mortal Kombat him, to the waiver wire. But I do think that like we've changed our expectations. Okay, now we're at this new expectation of like, could he be a low end 2? Like, I think it's still possible rest of the season.
All right, well, let me throw a quick curveball at you, and I don't want it to be like for everybody out there. There's a lot of strategy and it's context and all that type of stuff, but just as a very vague answer for you is this: in Dynasty, I hate buying running backs in the first place in Dynasty, but because his perceived value is so low, would you consider buying him low, or do you think that because of what's happening this year that they're probably going to add somebody next year and you wouldn't buy? Basically. Yeah. I mean, most of the time in Dynasty, when you see a dip, or in my opinion, like my approach to running backs is that when you see a dip like this from a non-elite player, like this isn't Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs or anything like that.
when you see a dip like this for a player that we kind of know as not, top 6, top 7 in the league, like locked in, I think that you could draw the line at like a Breece Hall type, where like he's talented enough that he'll likely, no matter the circumstance he's in, is going to get some work. I think the fragility is just there with Chase Brown. I mean, he was a day 3 pick to begin with. I liked him as a prospect, and obviously I thought he looked good last year. And if Joe Burrow's back, I do think that whoever's in that backfield will have more success. But I don't know. I think that it's still in a void, even though you could buy low right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. All right. So here's the big question for week 7 specifically, because if you've stepped on Twitter since Monday, it's can't wait to put him in my lineup. This is what I've been waiting for. I'm 4-2, and this is like, well, and that's not the question I want to ask about this player. And I'm going to put this on you, JJ, is like, you have to take a side. It has to be one of the, and I'm going to come back and tell you were right or wrong. And everybody, no, and I'm joking to say that is because the victory laps are coming on Monday for this player. Rashee Rice is back. Obviously, there's a contingent that, boom, right back to top 10. You can't deny what he's done at the end of the season 2 years ago and the beginning of the season last year. And then there's the other side. It was like, well, he's been out for a long time. Xavier Worthy is a thing. Travis Kelce showing some signs of coming back to life a little bit. So you're going to get disappointment. And of course, the disappointment people are going to be like, haha, I told you so if that happens. And then if he's top 10, people are going to be like, haha, I told you so. He's amazing. Can we have a reasoned conversation here? Like, where do you fall on Rashee Rice? Can it be like, is it okay, I guess, to say like, hey, you know what? He might be 15th and that's still okay. Or do you really think that there's top 10 potential right back out of the gate?
I think he's the wide receiver 1 rested. No, I'm just kidding. No, so I am bullish. I am excited about Rice coming back, partially because this offense has just looked really, really good. And Mahomes is doing things that he was doing 2 years ago, 3 years ago, before, these stupid low ADOT offenses that Matt Nagy's brought to Kansas City. And so I think that's, not that Rashee Rice is going to change, the depth of target, because obviously he's a more of a short intermediate kind of player to begin with. But I mean, look, you look at Mahomes playing at the level he's playing right now. Travis Kelce last year in the limited sample with Rashee Rice had a 14% target share, right? Like he wasn't, and I think that we'd all agree that he is not the same Travis Kelce that we've come to love on the football field. And so,
I don't know. Have you heard that one song? I mean, Taylor's got that whole Wood song for him, so she thinks differently.
some people love him off the football field too. Yeah. And so, I think Kelce, he's at like that 18-19% share right now. He could take a back, like fall back to like 13 to 15% share. And then you look at like the other pieces there, even if Xavier Worthy sees the exact same target share he's been seeing, last week, non-Xavier Worthy wide receivers had a 25% target share. The week before that, they were at 40%. I'm talking like the tertiary players, the Tyquan Thorntons of the world, the Juju Smith-Schusters of the world. Those guys are still seeing looks, even though we're not constantly and consistently using them in our fantasy lineups. So I think Rashee Rice could realistically step in, see a 25-ish% target share in the offense. It's fine if you want to play it a little bit safe to start, but I look at the wide receiver landscape and I'm like, there's like 10 good wide receivers in fantasy football. Like there are not many good wideouts at all in fantasy. And some of the good wideouts are, like even like a Cortland Sutton type is someone who every other week has a good target share. We perceive them to be like really, really strong assets, but even Cortland Sutton has a lot of variance and volatility to his profile. Deebo Samuel, one of the reliable players so far this year, is getting more than likely Terry McLaurin back this week, or he could get Terry McLaurin back this week. George Pickens, I love Pickens, and I love what I'm seeing from Pickens, but he takes a little bit of a hit for sure with CD Lamb coming back. So there are situations out there where I just look at the landscape overall, and I'm like, the wide receiver sucks this year. It's just not been good. If you have the dudes who have been good, then you're in a great spot right now. If you drafted JSN or Emeka Egbuka, Rome Odunze, like you feel good right now. But that's why, to me, it's easier to slot Rashee Rice as like a top 12 guy right away, just because the competition is pretty weak.
See, I told you, everybody, this is why you have to listen to JJ. Like a very reasoned, understandable response there. So, all right, let's get back to the video game style here. So you have to there's 3 wide receivers. I'm about to give you things. You have to give one. This is basically like blank, marry, kill, but video game style. Yeah. So you have to give one an extra life that their game can be saved. You can keep playing them for the rest of the year. One is game over. Turn the cartridge off. You're done. And then cheat code, which is basically like you got this little bonus life kind of thing for like, or you put the game genie in and you got this little run, but it's not going to last because as soon as you unplug it, like you're back to normal. Sure. So there's your options. Kendrick Bourne, Jameson Williams, Wan'Dale Robinson. Who's the extra life? Who's the game is over? And who's been the cheat code that potentially ends?
So I'll start with the easiest one, I think, and that would be the game over. And I'm just going to say Kendrick Bourne because of the possibility.
Everybody's coming back.
Yeah, right. Because George Kittle's coming back. Ricky Pearsall hopefully comes back. I also think there might be something, not to say that, like, don't let this narrative drive your evaluation necessarily, but there could be a little bit of something with like Mac Jones just prefers him. Like I'm not
well,
even,
they got breakfast together and then they bunked together.
Yeah. I'm not even connecting the New England stuff. I'm just saying that like there are some wide receivers where a quarterback just appreciates their tendencies and wants to target that player, like it has nothing. We don't have to talk about, the breakfast narrative or anything like that, but it's or the shower narrative. We have to just, go to the fact that like he just might like Kendrick Bourne a little bit more. And we know that Brock Purdy does like a Jawan Jennings. So if Jawan Jennings is healthy, then which is an if at this point, but like if Jawan Jennings is healthy, Ricky Pearsall. So we'll game over Kendrick Bourne here. I think it's really difficult, the other two, like realistically, because if you want to look at this totally logically and you're just looking for like a safe option that would not necessarily need that cheat code, it would probably be a Wan'Dale Robinson because he's giving you that consistent target share each week. But I actually think that my extra life, like I'm just gonna ride JMO. Like I'm just gonna keep Jameson Williams in the lineup and take the peaks with the valleys. I do think that, last week was obviously encouraging. We finally saw a little bit more work from him, more of those crossers that we need from him where he's just getting open. Like he has that space where he can do more after the catch. We weren't seeing that. Then that's like a Ben Johnson special, right? Like that's where JMO really thrived with Ben Johnson. And we saw that more last week. And I liked seeing that, obviously, just because that's what allows JMO to be more consistent of a fantasy asset. And the offensive environment is just great too. Wan'Dale Robinson, realistically, if you go look at what he's done this year, he's had 2 usable weeks, right? Mm-hmm. One of them was in that game against Dallas, one of the worst defenses in the league, if not the worst. And it was that weird like 16.7 ADOT game from Wan'Dale with Russell Wilson where he's getting down the field. And then last week against the Eagles defense was banged up. They did not look right. It was a really funky game. And Wan'Dale Robinson's touchdown was a missed tackle. Like it was just it was just horrible defense. And so in my opinion, I think Wan'Dale probably has like a what you're getting, like predictability versus a JMO, but I'm going to just ride JMO. You're going to have some really poor outings in there, but you're going to have better spiked weeks more consistently, I think, just given the offensive environment he's in.
Yeah, and if he catches that ball almost 3 weeks ago now, like we're also kind of a different perspective on him in general, because that's another great game that he would have had. All right, last fantasy question, and then the 2 fun ones that I do for everybody. Well, different ones, but before you get out of here. All right, so rankings is our thing in this business, and rankings don't always give the entire context. So I know you're going to put context behind this as you have with all these questions, but kind of going forward, we have Vidal, who had the huge game. By the way, Hassan Haskins wasn't the starter. Woody Marks was looking really good and then split again with Chubb right before the bye, and everybody saw the numbers and didn't realize they were really pretty much still 50-50. Yeah. Michael Carter, who is in the lead, not in the lead, in the lead, not in the lead himself. Rico Dowdle, who's been beyond amazing, historic 2 weeks, but now potentially gets Chuba Hubbard back, and Jaylen Warren. You don't have to give me a 1 through 5, but is there somebody from that group that if you were saying rest of the season, you feel the most confident in, and is there somebody that you feel the most concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jaylen Warren I probably feel most confident in because I think we're already seeing him in like a platoon role and he's usable enough in that role. But I mean, to me, whether you're looking at statistically or just the eye test, I mean, he was great last week. I mean, he does everything. Like he does everything. He's a great pass catcher, great in pass pro. That's something that obviously a player like Aaron Rodgers is going to love and something that they need, right? Like they need to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. And the Steelers are targeting the running back position at such an absurd rate right now that both like Gainwell can still get like 3 or 4 targets and Jaylen Warren can still, be relevant in fantasy himself. So I'll probably say I feel most confident just from like a projection standpoint and consistency standpoint in Jaylen Warren. I would probably say that like next on the list in terms of like who I would just rank would be Rico Dowdle, which sounds crazy, but like I think that this is going to be pretty 50-50 once Chuba's back. It
has to be.
It has to be. You have to take what he's done with a grain of salt because he played arguably the 2 best matchups imaginable for his skill set and what they wanted to do. But he's looked great. Like he outperformed expectations still. And then the player that I probably feel worst about would be Michael Carter. Just because I do think By the way, I'm curious. Like I think Michael Carter in this short term that we're in, like they get the Packers this weekend, and then they have a bye, and then it's Dallas. But we have no idea what this backfield is going to look like by 3 weeks from now. But in my opinion, if Amari DeMarcado's out this week, like if he had that ankle injury, I kind of like Michael Carter more than Bam Knight because negative game script, more pass catching work. I think the way that Bam Knight ends up outscoring Michael Carter is, does he luck into a touchdown, like a goal line look, because he's going to get the goal line work, right? But I don't like that backfield at all. That's not a backfield I really want to invest in. Woody Marks, I think you nailed it. It's just like people are just looking at the box score and the final the end production, and they're not looking at the fact that like he still played more snaps than Nick Chubb the last time we saw them. And I think we're going to see more Woody Marks in more of a negative or neutral game script, which is what we could see this week against Seattle. And then Kimani Vidal, we'll see. Miami is Miami. Like let's be like ground ourselves a little bit. That he looked good, I thought, but he kind of has like an Eckler to him. That's fun to watch, but I want to see him in a tougher environment. And also they still might bring someone in, which would be a problem obviously for him. And then Amarian Hampton could be back later this season. So that's kind of my take on each of those guys. Hopefully I answered the question in some way, but that's kind of the way I'd look at it.
Yeah, which is insane, by the way. You bring up the Rico Dowdle. I don't know that everybody knows how insane it was. He's 5th in rushing yards, by the way. Basically, in essentially 2 games, he was 5th. Awesome. And I say essentially, he had a few more touches mixed in there. But yeah, I agree. It sounded like you were almost about to ask me the thoughts on the Michael Carter, and I'm just projecting on that.
I was.
I chuckled in what you were saying because that's the exact answer I got. Like, so people were asking in my comments, they're like, well, why do you like Carter more than Knight? And I said the exact same thing. It's like, yes, there was the situation with Knight where he started getting more touches in the second half, but it was twofold. DeMarcado got hurt, as you mentioned, and then they were actually in contention and briefly had the lead. And that's why it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense for Knight, but the 2-minute drill, the passing downs, and then, as you said, the negative game script, I expect that a lot more often for the Cardinals than I do for them to actually be in the lead and leaning towards Knight. Like you said, the touchdown is going to matter. So agree pretty much across the board there, actually basically across the board. So 2 questions, fun ones before we get out of here. Well, if one's fun, one's not so much fun to answer. You'll see why here in a second. But the fun one is I do fun ranks every single week, as people know. And this week was the best one-hit wonders from the 1990s. I was originally going to do 90s and aughts, and then I got 15 songs deep, and I'm like, well, there's too many songs. I have to do a completely separate list for the aughts. So what's your favorite 90s one-hit wonder, JJ?
I saw you sent me this question, and I have like a mix that I always play that has basically every like alt rock kind of song from the 90s is a one-hit wonder, right? Like that, you could go on for days and days. The one that popped in my mind, though, when I was driving my son to daycare today was Two Princes from the Spin Doctors. Remember that song?
So I almost put that, but I got pushback that they had a second single. That was what it was. Yes. So Two Princes, look, one hit wonder. So
no one knows what the Spin Doctors are doing.
No, here we go. This is Little Miss Can't Be Wrong. You know that song. That's why it actually reached number 17 on the Hot 100.
Oh, so that doesn't count. Then what about like Mambo number 5 then?
That was on the list.
Or like the Macarena. The Macarena is probably
Macarena was the last one I put on there just because nobody really likes it. But if you want to see a bunch of white people,
what about
do a terrible dance?
Paul Bachman? Remember what is it?
Also on the list.
Okay.
He made the list. He is down at 25 with She's So High.
Yeah,
I knew you were thinking that.
Yeah.
Somebody called me out on Twitter and I added them to the list because 9 days, absolutely. Story of the Girl. It's Story of the Girl.
Yeah.
Cried the river and died in the whole world. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good one. All right, here's the tough one before you get out of here.
Okay.
It's the pick your poison. It's you don't, and I don't ever let anybody know ahead of time. It's the pick your poison one. It's a Nando DeFino special that I've been doing. I took from him because he doesn't podcast anymore. And he gave me the good pass to do it. So you have to choose one of these 3. No passing. One of these 3. It's your only options you can pick. Okay. So your first one, you lose every matchup that you don't correctly predict which Bills wide receiver is the leading scorer this week. So if you don't predict it correctly, you automatically lose your fantasy matchups. Number 2, Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey are your only running backs for the rest of the year. They stay healthy, but they're your only running backs for the rest of the year. And number 3, as I always tailor to the guest, you have to put out a tweet and pin it, JJ, that GoldenEye is definitively the vastly superior game to Perfect Dark.
Get out of here. Definitely not the third one. Guys, GoldenEye is literally a worse version of Perfect Dark. They took the exact same game engine and they just enhanced it and they did more with it. And people were like, no, give me GoldenEye. Perfect Dark is the better game. So no, I'm never doing that. I'd rather pick a Bills wide receiver. I mean, I think what
really.
Look, although I'm thinking too, if I knew what the wide receivers looked like for the running back question, maybe I go with the RJ Harvey and Travion one. But if I have just like mid-level wide receivers, then I would have to go with the Bills wide receiver one and just really, really like find a contact within the Bills organization and figure it out that way. Cause that's probably my best bet.
So baked in there, I guess this is the kind of a follow-up question. Is there any second half hope for Henderson and Harvey, or are they just pure handcuffs at this point?
Flex to handcuff at this point. Yeah. Like, I think that like there's a chance this week that like Henderson gets something going because they get Tennessee and, RJ Harvey and he's getting more and more, receiving work, which is good to see. But yeah, I mean, like, look, I don't like burying rookies too early because we do see a pretty big spike second half of the season. The thing that I'll say about Henderson in particular is I just think that the way New England is running him is just not I was really wrong with Henderson this year. I really liked him entering the season.
I think everybody was.
And I think New England's just running him wrong. Like a lot of runs up the gut. That's not his game. Get him in space. Just give him some swing passes. Let him do more on the outside. Look at his run chart from last week from Next Gen Stats. Literally everything between the tackles. Literally everything. There's nothing to the outside. That's not his game. He's not a grinded out running back. That's Ramondre Stevenson's game. And by the way, Ramondre Stevenson has been arguably worse, if not definitively worse, than Travion Henderson this year. So that's the one thing that's keeping me like, okay, clearly a bad situation. Clearly the coaching staff hasn't really like gotten into a groove with what Henderson's good at this point. And hopefully that changes a little bit down the stretch because I still think that he can be a weapon for them.
I hope you're right, because I was wildly off on him too. I even put out there, it's like, I don't need him to get more than a dozen touches a game because that's all I want to see from Henderson. And I didn't want these kind of touches, which I agree with you. But once again, JJ Zachariason, make sure you're following me. Again, I'll let you mention Living the Stream too, by the way. I don't think you mentioned that earlier as well.
I don't know if people want to listen to Living the Stream at this point. Living the Stream.
They want to listen to you, listen to everything.
Denny Carter and I do Living the Stream each week. And we give streaming picks. And then, there's the Late Round podcast and lateround.com. You can find it all.
Yeah, please give him a follow. He's got plenty of them, but he needs any more that he could get if you haven't heard of him. Like I said, rectify that, and hopefully you enjoyed having him today. One more time, JJ Zachariason at Late Round QB. As you can tell, has been around long enough. That was one of the originators of proponents and originators, we call it both, of pushing for taking quarterbacks late as the industry and smart drafters started to realize that's what we all should be doing. And yeah, one of the best in the business. Give him a follow, listen to everything. And as promised, also, before we get out of here, buy lows and sell highs. Kind of touched on some there, but some additional buy lows. David Montgomery at running back. No, I don't think David Montgomery is going to be a top 20 running back, but it's David Montgomery is a decent RB2. He will have some dips, but that's what makes him an RB2. But had a really nice game that we saw with the narrative, and then a kind of a down one. So people are just like, yeah, it's David Montgomery. He's having a down year because they're going to Jahmyr Gibbs so much. Still think he's a decent buy low that could slot in for a lot of teams that might be thin at running back. Similarly, but to an injury standpoint, both Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, it's not that I want them, but for an RB3 cost, and you don't have to play them, and they can be in your flex if you do. And then if one or the other got hurt, we know we have top 15, top 20 value. It's just one of them has to get out of the equation for us to be. It's similar to the Fannin, David Njoku situation. One of them needs to go away. Aaron Jones can come back next week, and nobody really wants him right now because Jordan Mason is doing well. Although I do think Jordan Mason is not exactly an RB1, and I don't actually think wants to be the team doesn't want to bell cow him. I think Aaron Jones is going to come in on the back half of the timeshare, but as the pass catching option, which in certain matchups in certain weeks could have the higher return value. So Aaron Jones, just because nobody really wants him. Derrick Henry, even coming off that game, people don't know what to think, and getting less than top 10 cost when you go get him. Similarly, the frustrations of Barkley, and then of course the narrative of, hey, all those touches last year, 370 and all that type of stuff. Then you get Saquon Barkley for less than top
5, 6, 7 running back cost, I would go get Barkley as the Eagles hopefully get right for the stretch down the rest of the season. At wide receiver, I mentioned it earlier in the show. This was the tease. Stephon Diggs coming off that game where Booty looked really good. I still think Stephon Diggs, the 2 weeks before that, being the clear number 1, is potentially the best option. Wide receiver 3 value, but you can possibly get him for less than that. Jameson Williams, as JJ brought up, I also like him as a buy low because everybody who had him and drafted him is supremely ticked off. And then Quentin Johnston, because of the injury and because Ladd McConkey's starting to come on, the Quentin Johnston basically stock chart should be like if you were looking at it, it's that giant peak and then it's crashing because Ladd McConkey's come on, Quentin Johnston's now hurt, and we went from, maybe like we have to give him respect as a top 20 wide receiver to wide receiver 3 range now. So if you can get him for that, I would still get Quentin Johnston. I still believe that he can be a fringe wide receiver 2 the rest of the season, like top 25-ish range. Sell highs. Breece Hall, because of the excitement. Everybody thinks like Breece Hall going to the Chiefs and the trade rumors. If you can get something pushing top 5 value, like put it this way, I'd rather have Derrick Henry than Breece Hall. It's super close. And if you don't want to make that trade because it's a wash, you don't have to make it. But the point being is their trade values are likely dissimilar. Cam Scatterboo, and I know people are going to come for me on this one because he's so entertaining and he's such a fun player to root for. But the touchdowns skewed both ways. He wasn't getting much touchdown equity, and then it reversed the opposite direction. Volume reliant, I don't think Tyrone Tracy's a severe threat. It's just with this situation, with this offense going to be up and down the rest of the season with a rookie quarterback, and I am enjoying Jackson Dart as much as anybody. But if he has a bad game this week for Scatterboo against the Broncos, people are immediately going to be like, that was a fun ride. So there's the other side of it is you go, oh my God, Cam Scatterboo scores against the Broncos. It could even go stock up from here. I'm just saying, if you can get RB1 value for Scatterboo, which I've seen some trades, and over on the Yahoo trade checker, you can go look at what the trades actually have been. RB1 value, trade Scatterboo. Anything less, don't. Similar to this, Rico Dowdle, if you can get top 15 value at running back, which is if you could trade Dowdle straight up for, go back to the Derrick Henry situation, probably not. You probably have to go a little bit deeper than that, but like a Rico Dowdle for Judkins coming off a bad game. If you can be patient and wait on Bucky Irving. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else out there. I'd probably still take Javonte Williams straight up. That kind of gives you the idea of range. And then at wide receiver, like a Xavier Worthy, A.J. Brown, those kind of types, high-end wide receiver 2s. There are people out there, I know a lot of you listening to this are like, no way in my league because it's super experienced and smart, and congratulations and kudos to you. But I tried, just like in the articles, I want to cover all bases from 8-team leagues to 16-team leagues to novices to experienced, and that's what I try to do. So if it's not for you, I'm trying to help everybody. Other sell highs, wide receivers before we get out of here. Drake London coming off that game and that amazing target share. Again, this is a Drake London if you're going to get top 6 wide receiver value, top 5 wide receiver value in the conversation of Nico Collins, CeeDee Lamb, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, if somebody's going to give you that kind of value. George Pickens, obviously, with CeeDee Lamb coming back, but some people might believe that he's still top 10 even with him. In a Devontae Adams type of range, I would have him behind Devontae Adams with CeeDee Lamb healthy. So I would put Pickens kind of more in that a hurt Ibuka, but Deebo Samuel, Tedero McMillan kind of range in there. And then Tedero and McMillan kind of in that same range. The 2 touchdowns on very limited yards. The touchdowns came back around for McMillan, but it's still Bryce Young, who hasn't looked that great this year. It was a good matchup for McMillan to get it done. But as seen this week, a bad matchup for McMillan, and then potentially going forward, just more frustrations and the lack of touchdowns. So that would be your chance on McMillan. And there's your chance to finish the podcast. And we'll be back on Friday, which, I don't know. A lot of people haven't been listening. Like about half the people seem to listen on Fridays. Is this a bad time to do it? Should I do it on Saturday? Should I not do it at all? I figured the last bits of notes and injuries would help. But I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. But also, you should tell your friends and everything. We plateaued at getting the listenership back. And you're not supposed to plateau me. You're supposed to share me to everybody out there. Tell your friends. Let them get help in their leagues. Maybe not the leagues they share with you because you don't want to give them the benefit. But I would appreciate you. And that's why I love you guys. That's why I do this podcast. That's why I have on great guests. And that's why I'm going to end this at some point while I'm talking.